I wanted to ask you this question. Italy obviously has this incredible diversity of grape varieties and this incredible history and landscape that you mentioned in the reading as well, more so than any other wine producing region in the world. So I wanted to ask you, what then are the challenges and opportunities involved in preserving and protecting that diversity?
Yes, this is the fundamental question because all these studies needs to be they need to be useful for something.
Hello, and welcome to Book Club with the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Hough, and I'm delighted that you're joining us as we get between the vines with some of the best wine writing out there. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy the show with the Italian Wine Podcast.
This month, our guest is Elia Quarzago. Elia is a winemaker on the Spanish island of Mallorca and one of the authors of a book called Cento custodi per cento vitigni, la biodiversità viticola in Italia. Hi, Elia. How are you?
Hi, Richard. It's all good, thank you. And you, thank you for having me today here at the podcast.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us all the way from Mallorca. I think you're our first guest, certainly on Book Club and perhaps even on the Italian Wine Podcast from Mallorca. So that's a real pleasure.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure also for me.
Great. So before we talk about the book that you've been involved in producing, this lavish publication, I'd like to explore a bit about your personal background and your career in wine. So you grew up in Verona and studied enology at the University of Verona.
Yes.
So my question is, have you always been interested in wine, and what inspired you to study enology?
Yes, since when I was a child, I've always helped my grandfather in his little vineyard. And I really liked it, but I wasn't thinking about it as my future career. And the funny thing is that my interest for wine started working as a waiter in a wine fair for the dock of Soave, which was organized at the time by Aldo Lorenzoni, which is also a founder of GRASPO, so the association that wrote this book that we are going to talk about it. It was interesting because there I discovered that the wine is a sector which is way more bigger than what I expected, with a lot of knowledge and studies. So I decided to study the enology at San Michele all'Adige in Trento, and then my career started.
Okay, very interesting. I'm curious about your grandfather's winery. Was it a winery or was this just something that he was doing to make wine for his family, as I know many people in this part of the world do?
Yes, it was just to make some wine for the family, something like 300 liters, so nothing so serious. But it was interesting to taste how the life in the vineyard is, to work with the nature.
Absolutely. And was that in Valpolicella or somewhere else? Did you grow up in the city?
Yes, it's near to the city of Verona, near to the river Adige, in San Michele Extra, which is in the east side of Verona.
So towards Soave, is that right?
It's in the middle, right in the middle of the two
Between Verona and Soave.
nations, yes.
And so you must have picked up a passion, I suppose, for making wine and for the experience of seeing the grapes transform into...
Yes, exactly. It was an event when it was the harvest time, because all the family was together to do this harvest, which was more a party than a real work, because
Yeah.
it was only few kilos of grapes.
And you mentioned also then that you worked as a waiter as well as studying enology. You also qualified as a sommelier.
Yes.
What did that qualification give you that your enological studies didn't?
Yes, this is a nice question. And yes, I studied also for the sommelier qualification. In the meanwhile, I was studying enology. Because I wanted to have a 360 degrees point of view over the wine sector. So it was important to taste a lot of wines from other regions with people that were more had more knowledge about wine and wine tasting. So it was a way to learn.
Yeah. So you're coming at wine from a theoretical point of view, from a winemaker's point of view, but then also from point of view of a hospitality worker, I suppose, as well. So yeah, it really does give you that 360-degree perspective on things.
Yes, yes. Then I've always worked as a winemaker, but the sommelier was interesting to see also the other side
Yeah.
of when a bottle is done and you have to serve it to people and describe it. It's another job, but very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned that you're mainly working as a winemaker, but you began as a seasonal pruner and then a cellar man and then a brand ambassador and then an assistant winemaker, a viticultural technician, and now you're the vineyard manager at the Can Gelat ecological estate in Mallorca. Can you tell us a bit about that journey from pruner in Verona to vineyard manager in Mallorca? How did you end up in Mallorca?
Yes, sure. Of course, I started doing some little works in many vineyards while I was at the high school, like for seasonal works during the breaks for the vacations. So I started pruning and doing some harvest, and it was the first experience where I've understood that I could do this job, that I liked to work outside in the vineyards. Then I moved to the cellar side, working for 3 years between Soave and Valpolicella. And a few years ago, I decided to move to Bordeaux in Pessac-Léognan, in a chateau where I could continue my work as a cellarman, seeing also another side of the winemakers techniques in Bordeaux.
Yeah.
Then there I had the possibility to apply for a job here in Mallorca as a vineyard manager. And I decided to try this experience, which I'm continuing right now because I'm still here in Mallorca at Can Gelat. And I really like it because the vineyard managing side is what I really love about this job. So I'm happy that about my journey to get here.
Excellent.
And now we have to continue working well with high quality.
Excellent. How long have you been in Mallorca?
Now I'm finishing the second year, so I did the 2 harvests here in Mallorca.
Okay. And for those of us that are unfamiliar with the Mallorcan wine scene, can you give us a quick overview, the climate, the terroir, the culture, the history of winemaking in Mallorca?
Yes, of course. Mallorca has an historical scene of wine producers that it's not so known outside the island because Mallorca it's always seen as a touristical site, for summers because it has beautiful beaches and sea.
Yeah.
But the history of winemaking here it's very ancient because the Romans brought here the first vines. So it's a tradition that began many centuries ago. And there are also some native varieties that are possible to find only here in the archipelago of Balears. For example, Cayet, Mantonegro, and Gorgoyas for the red ones, and Prensal Blanc and Giro Rosso for the white ones. But there are also other little varieties. Those varieties are not known outside the island. For example, I didn't know them before, but it was interesting to see that if you treat them well in the vineyard and also in the cellar, those varieties can lead to very fine wines, very interesting wines that one day I'd like you to try because it's very
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
And here talking about the terroir, it's the climate is very hot without a lot of rains, so it's dry for all the year except for some strong rains. So the rains are not so many in terms of numbers, but when it rains a lot, so it can be also a problem
Yeah.
for if you have some vineyards with slopes and with pendencies. But in general, for the climate here, since it doesn't rain a lot, mildew is not a big issue, but oidium it is. Yes, regarding the soils, mainly the vineyards are located in the flat areas where you can find red soil rich in clay and nutrients. But there are also some sites under the Tramontana mountains. The Serra de Tramontana is the mountain that is located in the north side of the island, and here you can find more white soils with a lot of calcareous soils. And Can Gelat is in this situation at the base of the Tramontana with a really white soil poor in nutrients. And so in general, due to also the climate, to some soils specifics, the production here in Mallorca is not big in terms of kilos for hectare, as it was used, for example, in Valpolicella or in Verona. So we have to work to reduce the quantity of grapes in order to have better plants in a good, healthy estate.
And what about the Can Gelat estate? Can you tell us something about the history of that winery?
Yes, sure, with pleasure. Can Gelat is an ecological estate, now with 7 hectares of vines and others with other trees. And we are in the north of the island, in the hills of Moscari, just before the Serra de Tramontana. And as I said, we have these particular conditions of white calcareous soil. And since we are in the hills, we have a lot of slopes and dependencies. So all our vineyards are with a lot of pendants. So they are really hard to work. But thanks to these particular conditions, we have a really good terroir. Also because there is a wind that always that it's always present. So also for the oidium or mildew, it's a very good place. It's very safe and healthy for this point of view. And we have international and local varieties. For example, for the international, we have Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Chardonnay, and also Monastrell from Spain. Then we have Montenegro, Cayette, and Giro Rosso as typical variety from here.
Okay.
And it's interesting to see that the local varieties are really used to this climate and to these conditions. So you really see a difference between what is local and what it's not.
Yeah. And what about the signature wine? What would you say is the winery's signature wine? If I had to choose just one bottle, what would you suggest?
Okay, well, it depends also on your taste because we produce 2 red wines, 2 white wines, and 1 rosé. So we have a monovarietal red wine of Cayette, which is this typical grape, and I really love it. So I would like to advise you to try this one. It's a soft red wine in the style of Pinot Noir of Burgundy, but with other tastes.
Okay, sounds good.
Or I would advise you the Giro Rosso, which is the other local vine made with this variety, which is really interesting because it's salty and it has a good balance between the body and the mouth when you taste it and the aromas, which are some citric aromas, pear aromas, and then with the evolution, it's very good to see how it changes because it's a very fine wine.
Okay.
I love it. I would advise you those 2 wines.
Okay, they sound excellent. And you mentioned these typical native local varieties that you're using. Is that something that you have a particular interest in, the preservation and nurturing of these typical native varieties?
Yes, well, this is the perfect question because then we can see also the project of GRASPO, which is really focused on the preservation of local varieties.
Yeah,
Yes, it's a word regarding the varieties that it's absolutely interesting for me because we have a lot of varieties that we are losing and that we have already lost. So losing these unique varieties, it's always a pity because once you lose them, you usually you can't come back, or it's very difficult to have them back. So
yeah,
it's nice that here on the island the wine making sector really helps to work with these varieties because also for a commercial purpose they are fine and then they can be sold, so it's nice. And
yeah,
yes, I'd like to go deeper into the varieties of Mallorca because there are also other varieties that are going to disappear, and I'd like to do a study and to write an article about it. But in the future, eh, I will do it. So I'll let you know.
Okay, great. Perhaps we can talk about that a little bit later in the conversation. But this seems like a good moment just to turn to the book itself, Cento Custodi per Cento Vitigni. And I should say at this point, it's a bilingual book. It's written in Italian and English. And it struck me reading it that it's a kind of like a doomsday book for Italian grape varieties. And it was published by an organization called GRASPO.
Yeah,
Can you tell us who or what is GRASPO? What is their purpose and what is their objective?
yes, with pleasure. GRASPO is a no-profit association of wine enthusiasts, winemakers, viticulturists, technicians, researchers. So it's a very heterogeneous group of people with a passion of wine and vine protection. Actually, GRASPO is the acronym for Research Group for the Safeguard and Protection of Viticultural Originality. It was started in Veneto, our region in northeast of Italy, where there are Verona, Venice, Dolomiti, just to give some reference for people to know where it's Veneto. And in our dialect, Graspo means the bunch, which in Italian is raspo. And we like to think about it as a graspo as a bunch, which is an heterogeneous group of people. And as the berries are all different, every person here has a different background, knowledge, and abilities that, when shared, lead to this kind of project, the successful of sharing passion and knowledge. And the aim is to study, plant, and vinify ancient Italian varieties, which are now in a situation of extinction risk. There is a research side of the project where we go in different parts of Italy to see some old vines of ancient varieties that are really in a serious risk of extinction. So the first thing is to do an analysis, phenological analysis. So seeing if the leaf has something different from other varieties to have some first details about the variety. If we see that it can be an interesting variety and a unique variety for for the genes, for its genotype, we do a DNA analysis to be sure about which kind of variety it is, and it happened 15 times that we have discovered that those plants were not registered as varieties. So we discovered 50 new varieties that now are registered in the International Book of the Wines,
Hmm.
and it is something amazing if you stop to think about it, because you are really going to discover parts of the Italian viticultural culture that wasn't known before. The project is quite young because there's only a few years, and it was founded by a group of winemakers, Aldo Lorenzoni and Luigino Bertolazzi and others, which are 2 points of reference for our regional and national wine sector.
Yeah,
They put all their knowledge and their contacts to develop this project, which is very important, and I'm proud to be part of it and help them in this kind of work.
absolutely. It is a very important project. For me, the substance of the book, basically a series of portraits of these at-risk vines, but also, and I think more interesting from my point of view, it's a portrait of the farmers who tend them and the wines, the remarkable wines that they produce. So yeah, I find it really interesting delving into some of those particular little portraits. The book is written in English and Italian, and I'm curious to understand from you, who is the audience for this book? Is it really just a book that will sit on the shelves of a library as a record of Italy's native varieties, or do you see it being something that should be more widely read?
Yes, no, it's a thing that we thought together. We discussed about it because this is the third book that we print, and with this book, we try to change our audience, because the first two were written for a technical audience, so they were very technically, with a lot of technical details.
Mm,
And this book is written also for people who are not who don't work in this sector, but they are interested in wine and they can appreciate the this kind of project, the biodiversity in the vineyards. So we decided to write not also about the varieties, but also about the people that protect and cultivate these varieties. So the focus is on the people, on the culture that they have, the regional traditions, because this book tells the story of 100 custodians, 100 viticulturists from all over the Italian country. Yes, the focus is more to on the empathy and the stories about these people, this variety,
mhm.
and of course we can go into details, but there are also the two previous books to. If somebody is interested, you can find in the GRASPO website
Yeah,
the details also for the previous books.
that was clear for me as well, that really these are the portraits of the people and their daily lives, preserving and protecting and working to produce these wines. That was really what was of interest to me. I guess the more technical aspects for someone like me without a technical background would have probably been over my head. But the portraits themselves I find really fascinating.
Thank
What about your own contribution? It was a group effort production of this book. What was your personal contribution?
Yes, if I can tell something that I forgot to tell before in the
Mm,
presentation of Graspo, because it's a very important point. Yes, that we do some these studies about the plants, but the really turning point of this project is that we only want to talk about varieties that we can drink, that we can taste inside a glass. So the thing that makes this project different from other researches or other projects is that all these varieties are vinificated. So last year we did more than 100 micro vinifications, and for all these varieties, we do a wine, which can be also only 4 liters, for example. but it's fundamental. It's very important to talk about some varieties, knowing how they can be transformed into a wine, because this is the final purpose. Because otherwise, it's a study that can remain um, locked here for the interest of researchers. But when you have a glass of wine that you can taste, all all the panorama changes, because you understand that it's not only a beautiful story to tell, but it's something practical, and
Yeah,
that can really be, I think, for the future in the winemaking
yeah,
of a region.
absolutely.
Sorry, but I would like to underline this part.
Yeah, no, that's very clear. I mean, I guess there's preserving endangered species, whatever species they are, is important. But when there's a glass of wine at the end of it, I guess that work becomes even more important.
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay, so tell me then about your personal contribution. How did you get involved in the project?
Yes. For this project, I took care about some articles about the Sardinian region. I go into the Sardinian winemaking aspects, and because it's a region that I really love, and
Hmm.
it was a good opportunity to go deeper into this Sardinian world, talking with people that they told me their experiences. So it was really beautiful, and there are other writers, other authors. So we divided our in regions
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
our work.
Maybe this is a good time to take a reading.
Yes, yes. Okay, I selected some articles just to give a taste of what it's written inside this book.
Okay.
Since we were speaking about Sardinia, if you want, I can read a part of Pansale, which is a variety, a typical variety from Sardinia.
Yeah.
And in this case, we are at page 238, talking about the Berritta family.
Okay. Perfect.
The Berritta family has been cultivating vines and olive trees in the Odoene Valley in the commune of Dorgali for several generations. Plants with strong roots in history and the white limestone soil that yields their wines. The location is one of the most striking, in the midst of one of the most beautiful natural settings of the region, at the foot of Supramonte Peak near Lake Cedrino, and just a few kilometers from the beaches of Calagonone, Calafuili, and Calaluna. The Odoene Valley is characterized by rich soils of decomposing granite mixed with limestone, and enjoys the microclimate conditions that, even in the past, allowed the development of numerous crops, so much that this area became the symbol of the local economic and agricultural revival after the Second World War. Due to the natural slopes, the plots here are very small and fragmented. Antonio Berritta, a dynamic and motivated winemaker, recalls that until the mid 20th century, before the introduction of tractors, these hills were so inaccessible that they were connected only by narrow, winding paths, where even trade wagons couldn't pass. Horses were then used to transport and harvest grapes, distributed in 4 loads of wicker baskets at a time. The units of measurement at the time were therefore not quintals or trailers, but just horses. Each basket weighed 20 kilograms. A horse corresponded to 80 kilograms of fresh grapes. Thanks to the fortunate combinations of climate and geology, vines found a perfect habitat here to develop, and it's among the different varieties grown that a rare native white grape variety called Pansale stands out. It's a variety found mostly in old vines in different parts of the island, where it's known by different names depending on the location. Its genetic link with Monica bianca is confirmed by the morphology of its bunch and also by recent molecular analysis. The vegetative life of this variety is characterized in spring by small yellow leaves and open axes that later develop buds with a semi-erect growth habit and unusual reddish hues. The long and carefully work of recuperation and the selection of Pansale began in the 80s, when the Barita family came into possession of an old vineyard plot, in which, scattered among Canonau, Monica, and Bovale, were also some Pansale plants. From the old Pansale plants, shoots were taken to perform grafting, creating the first plants, when this variety was not recognized and certified. Now the original Pansale vineyard is more than 25 years old, and it's showing great adaptability and good drought resistance, considering that it has no irrigation system. A balance that has been confirmed over the years, ensuring models yields by excellent quality. The first bottle vintage was 2005, and it's interesting to observe the evolution of Pansale, which expresses its best in its youth, but can also show interesting evolutionary notes a few years later. The wine expresses all its natural freshness, with typical hints of almond, blossoms, plum, medlar, and gooseberry. An ancient history binds the territory of Dorgali to Pansale and the Berita family, who, following the successes and appreciations collected over the years, will continue to write together the bright future that this variety deserves.
Excellent. Yeah, that gives a really good flavour of the way the book approaches the subject of these at-risk native vines and taking in the historical factors, the science, the viticulture, the culture, the human stories. So yeah, very interesting.
Thank you. Yes, it's a mix of stories.
A mix of everything. Yeah, it comes at it from every possible angle without getting too lost or too technical.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you this question. Italy obviously has this incredible diversity of grape varieties and this incredible history and landscape that you mentioned in the reading as well, more so than any other wine producing region in the world. So I wanted to ask you, what then are the challenges and opportunities involved in preserving and protecting that diversity?
Yes, this is the fundamental question, because all these studies needs to be they need to be useful for something. In fact, the interesting part is that there are a lot of varieties from the past that during the years were abandoned for economical or market reasons, or for some diseases or different reasons. But some problems that those varieties had in the past, actually, they can be some interesting resource for us, because simply thinking about the how the climate changed in the last
Mhm.
century, for example, there can be some varieties from the past that had more adaptability to dry seasons or to hot temperatures. And in fact, we did some tastings in the area of Valpolicella with some varieties, ancient varieties of Valpolicella, that were amazing for the acidity that they brought to into the wine. And actually, we know that the main problem, is to preserve acidity and pH in the wines. Those varieties can be interesting as a blend, or also as a monovarietal varieties for the wine. And of course, sometimes those varieties are not, they can be good or not good, as all the varieties in the world. But I've tasted some really, really nice varieties. And for example, the Quayara from the Veneto region really surprised me, because it was an amazing wine. I don't understand why it was
Mm.
abandoned in the past, because it's an amazing
Yeah,
wine.
that's interesting. So these at-risk varieties, if cared for properly, or if we understand them properly, may provide some solutions to problems currently facing the wine industry, like climate change.
Yes, having a group of different varieties and biodiversity, it's always a plus. It's always a benefit.
Mm,
So when you are able to select because you have a lot of varieties, it's better than when you are forced to choose always the same varieties, because you had already lost
yeah.
the ancient ones. So yes, this is the really turning point of all these researches. And we like to say, as a slogan for GRASPO, vines from the past for wines for the future.
Yeah, I like that. In some ways, the situation mirrors almost the situation more generally in Italy. Italy, as we know, is blessed with these incredible cultural treasures like the Colosseum or Pompeii or the city of Venice. But with that comes a big responsibility to preserve and protect these treasures. That's not always so easy. So, could you tell us about some of the people, some of the individuals, some of these farmers who, on my reading of the book, are just small local farmers doing an important job of preserving these native varieties?
Yes, sure. Well, for example, the Berita family that we read before, they did this selection in an old vineyard of shoots, and they reproduced them. But I'd like to talk about the La Vite del Fantini, which is a 300 years old vine in Emilia Romagna, which was protected and preserved by Luigi Stefano and Alessandro Galletti. Then I can pass you some photos, or for the people that have the book in their hand now, it's at page 154.
Okay.
And yes, I can read a part of it,
Sure.
because here the interesting part is that the story has a lot of also scientific parts and the researches.
Okay.
So I start reading it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like a relay race with button changes, including the rescue and safety of a century-old monumental vine near Badolo in the commune of Pianoro in the Bologna Hills. A race against time and abandonment, whose protagonists are in order Luigi Fantini, Stefano Galli, Alessandro Galletti, Ilaria Filippetti, and Marisa Fontana. They recount it this way in the text on all the local varieties of Emilia-Romagna. The vine was first photographed in 1961 by Luigi Fantini, a man of Greek culture and scholar of the area, while he was working on a photographic volume of ancient buildings of the Bolognese mountains. Fantini attributed an age of about 300 years to the plant, reporting in one of his writings. It produces 5 to 6 quintals of excellent black grape annually. Despite this important testimony, a long period of abandonment followed. In the year 2000, Stefano Galli, head of the LIPU section. LIPU is an association in Italy of preservation of fauna and flora, of the natural ecosystem, found the 100-year-old vine in a very poor condition, overgrown by brambles and partially covered by waste soil to the extent that the trunk only protruded 60 centimeters. So began a long process of cleaning and restoration, not without difficulties, because the plant was in a really bad condition. However, freed from dry, rotten parts and ants, this old lady of the Apennines showed extraordinary resilience. But to make it completely safe, Stefano Galli asked for the help of Alessandro Galletti, owner of Podere Riosto estate, who supported all the preservation actions with enthusiasm and professionalism. To be sure not to lose this important genetic resource, some buds derived from the first pruning were overgrafted onto vines in the Podere Riosto, while others were given to some trusted nurserymen to obtain rooted cutting that would constitute a small vineyard of the farm. Then it tells about some isoenzymatic analyses that were done and had grouped the centenary plant with other varieties entered in the National Register of Varieties, Negretto, Nerello, Cappuccio, and Perricone Nero. DNA analysis then ruled out any correspondence with these free grape varieties and did not identify any relationship with the known Italian varieties. I'm not going to read you all the article, but I think it's interesting to see how there is a part of manual work, cutting the grass and preserve the plant from be eaten by the nature, and then the scientific side with all the analysis, trying to find the relationship between varieties. It's a very complex work.
Sure. One question I have is, do these varieties have the necessary quality and yield to be commercially viable, or was that why they were abandoned in the first place?
Yes, this is a very important point. And of course, some of these variety maybe are not good tasting them alone. For example, in these tastings that we did, there were some varieties where maybe I'm not drinking a whole bottle, but they can be interesting in a blend. Or
Okay.
since there are other varieties which are very good, for example, the Quagliara that I told you before, or also the Maiolica from Abruzzo, and others, of course. And now that we can taste into the glass how those varieties can be transformed into wine, then we can say, okay, this variety is good. I can plant 1 hectare, and this variety is not so good. So maybe I will use it as a blend, or I will take other decisions. But of course, there are some really nice varieties and other varieties that probably, if they were abandoned, it was for or some taste for the taste, or for
Yeah,
and also then now we can consider that we are more focused on the quality of
sure.
the grapes and of the wines, but in the past it was more important that a variety could produce a lot of kilos.
Are they transferable, or are these local native varieties best kept and best grown in situ?
This is a part that we have to do some researches, because actually we are working region for region, area for area,
Hmm.
and since every region has its own ancient varieties, for the moment we are focused on staying of working in the area where we find these varieties. But of course, for the future, if a variety that is found in Veneto finds the perfect
Hmm.
terroir and conditions in I don't know, in Tuscany or in another region, it can be interesting to plant it in the other region where it was always done during the centuries. Because here we have a lot of international grapes that can come from other parts of Europe.
Sure. And what about from the consumer's point of view? Do wines made from these endangered vines generally come with a premium price tag? And if so, are consumers willing to pay a premium for these wines given their special status?
Yes, it depends also on the purpose of the company that produce the wines.
Mm,
But I see that for a lot of wineries, having a bottle of an ancient variety vinificated by itself, I mean, with an 100% of, for example, Maiolica from
hmm.
so it's a value to communicate. It's something that people understand that you are doing a very interesting work.
Hmm.
So yes, usually are little productions with a good price. I mean, good price in the sense of high price, because when it's something done in a little production,
Yeah,
and you don't produce a lot of bottles. Those bottles need to be sold for the price that they deserve. And an example, a very interesting example, is the Dorona from Venice by Bisol, the name of this man that protected it.
hmm.
And well, the Dorona, it's a variety related to Garganega in Veneto, and also thanks to the commercial visibility that Venice has.
It's a brand in itself, isn't it?
Yes, and they discovered in some old gardens in Venice and in the island of the Laguna of Venezia these old plants of this white grape, which now it's called Dorona, and they produce in the island of Torcello a, a little amount of bottles, but they are sold for a very high price because it's a little production in an island in Venice. Well, it's a very lucky situation, but
Yeah,
it's an example that if the communication is done in the right way and if the product is good, it can lead to a really successful project.
yeah, absolutely. If our listeners are interested in that Venice production, Marc Millon has interviewed the producer in the past on the Italian Wine Podcast. So we put some details on the show notes because it is a very interesting story. Do you want to give us a final reading before we turn to the habits of writing and how you went about producing this book?
Well, I can just read a little part from another story from Sardinia.
Yeah.
I don't want to read all the article, but just a few points that I really liked. Talking with the family Silattari because it gave me a nice story about the culture of this Malvasia di Bosa in Oristano in Sardinia.
Okay.
We're talking about the Malvasia family.
Okay.
Which is a larger family, as in an ancient and convoluted family tree, several branches corresponding to the numerous types of Malvasia, whose genetic, ampelographic, and aromatic profile and area of origin differ through the world. In this articulated context, the Malvasia di Sardegna, an aromatic white grape variety native to the city of Monemvasia in the Peloponnese and imported to Sardinia, probably during the Byzantine domination or following the sea routes of the Knights Templar, hides a special story. Doing some reformations in some old houses in this area of Sardinia, they had to break some walls, and it's quite common to find ancient bottles of Malvasia inside the walls because the families used to put these bottles inside the walls and then the wall covering it to avoid that some people in the family could drink this wine. The idea was to open these bottles only when a son or a daughter would have married. For this special event, they broke the wall and took out the bottles for the party, and I really loved
Yeah.
story because I never heard about something like
No,
this.
it's a remarkable story. And so what happened? They basically put the bottles of wine in the walls, and then the wine was forgotten, only to be discovered years later.
Yes, sometimes, yes, doing some reformation, they discovered very, very like 100 years old bottles of Malvasia, which is an amazing story to tell. And Giovanni Porco, which is the owner, told me that he had the occasion to try one of these bottles, and it was
Yeah.
like to taste something from the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a very unique
Tell
experience.
us, Elia, about your involvement then in the writing process. I don't think you would describe yourself as a wine writer, you're a winemaker, but what was it like to be writing about wine and to participate in this project? Was it something you enjoyed?
Yes, sure. I'm a winemaker before everything. But I've always liked to write, uh, as many people when I was younger, some poetries or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Then I focused more in the winemaking job. Last year, when I met Aldo Lorenzoni, I told him in an event, if you need an help, I'd like to participate to your project without knowing that they were going to write a book, but only because I liked this kind of project.
All right.
And then they told me that there was this book coming up, so I said, okay, I write some articles for the project, and it was something that I really liked. It was my first time that wrote something about wines for a book, and I'd like to continue this activity because I really like to write about wine, about other things. Now I'm writing some music, so this year was a year of inspiration.
Excellent. And you mentioned that also at the beginning of the interview that you'd like to write an article. What's next for you?
Yes, the next article that I want to work on is on the viticulture in Mallorca,
Yes.
and the idea is to write it for to be published in Italy, because I'd like that this side of Mallorcan production can be known also in my country, because I think it has the right value to be known. Yes, I'd like to tell this story, and then why not, if I have time, to go deeper in other Spanish regions, because I don't know much about them, and I'd like to go to do some wine trips. But yes, I have to find the time because it's difficult to.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, it's always a question of finding time. There is, I guess, a lack of understanding or appreciation for Mallorcan wine, Spanish wine, perhaps even in Italy. Italy is blessed with so much good wine that Italians tend mainly to drink Italian wine. Is that a problem? Is that a challenge for you if you're going to write about Mallorcan wine? How do you overcome that?
Yes, the purpose is also for this reason, to make people familiar with this other part of Europe where we produce good wines. And well, of course, I love Italian wines, and I'm Italian, so I will always defend my country. But it's interesting to taste also other countries' wine, because as we are Italian, we can also taste some French, some Spanish, some Australian wine. We don't have to be closed, tasting also only our wines.
Absolutely. What would your grandfather have made of that suggestion? Was he someone who experimented, or would he have preferred to have drunk only the wine that he grew in his vineyard?
Well, my grandfather is quite is quite a simple man. He likes to drink his wine, even if sometimes it wasn't so good, because
It's his.
no, he's not a fine winemaker. It's a old countryman, but with a lot of passion.
Yeah.
This is the.
Okay. It reminds me of my father-in-law, who's Italian, who would drink only the wine from his own region.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. What about reading for pleasure? What's on your bedside table at the moment?
Okay. You find me in a moment where I'm not reading a lot because we
Okay.
just finished the harvest.
The harvest, yeah, it's a busy time.
No, I have a book here that I'd like to read of Saramago. Yes, stories, romances, and also I have some books about wine that I have to read since a lot of time. But I want to find maybe now I have some 3 weeks.
Okay.
I can refine the joy of reading.
Okay. Yeah, it's a tough question when you're in the midst of harvest. I guess reading for pleasure isn't your number one priority.
No, but I listen to a lot of podcasts or audiobooks.
Yeah.
So I try to to listen them instead of reading them.
Yeah, good. I'm the same actually. I found in recent years I listen to audiobooks more than I read now, and also podcasts as well. In fact, the book I'm reading at the moment is by Louis Theroux, who is an English documentary maker, but also a podcaster. His podcast was one that I listened to during the lockdown. And this book is basically a lockdown diary that he wrote during the COVID-19 lockdown. It's a really honest and really funny account of his experience of lockdown with a young family, which reminded me a lot of my own experience during that weird time in our recent history. So yeah, that's Theroux, the Keyhole. It's called by Louis Theroux.
Okay, I will take note of this.
Yeah, very funny. A take on just that strange time and the challenges of being a dad or a husband or trying to work when you're all cooped up in a house together with the rest of your family.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay, my final question is, where can our listeners follow you? And also, where can they get a copy of this book?
Okay, sure. My personal account, which is Elia Quarzago, the name, and on LinkedIn, Elia Quarzago. And regarding the GRASPO, there is the GRASPO website, also on Instagram, Associazione GRASPO, and I advise you to the people that are listening to follow it because they post a lot of interesting photos, and you can follow all the activity that we are doing.
Okay.
Regarding the book, it is possible to order it in the GRASPO website.
Okay. If you search GRASPO, I think we'll find it. We'll also, I'll add a link to the website on the show notes for the program. Elia, thank you very much for your company today. Thanks for telling us about your life in Mallorca and the important work of GRASPO, preserving these endangered species of Italian grapes. It's been a really interesting discussion, and the book is a really interesting and important piece of work as well. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you very much for having me and having us as the GRASPO group. It was an honor. So I hope that also people have enjoyed this moment. So I wait you to taste some GRASPO wines and also some Mallorcan Can Gelat wine.
Yeah, I would love to. Next time you're in Verona, we can get together.
Yes, sure.
So thanks again for joining us on the Italian Wine Podcast. Don't forget, next month we'll have another fascinating wine book to discover. So until then, ciao.
Thanks for joining us on Book Club with the Italian Wine Podcast. Tune in again next month when we'll get between the vines with another great wine book. Remember, our show notes, including full details of all the books we've discussed today, are available at italianwinepodcast.com or wherever you get them.